In this episode of the AI AEC Show, I welcome back René Morkos, PhD, the visionary founder and CEO of Alice Technologies, to explore the latest advances in AI for construction scheduling and project optimization. Since our last conversation, how have you observed the construction technology development, implementation, and funding landscape evolve?
That's a great question, Arnie. I think the big change that's happened is generative AI. So large language models have proliferated the human psyche. I think that at Alice Technologies, we developed two scheduling agents, one of which can run simulations, and the other can give you insights into a given schedule. You can upload a schedule and then have a conversation about it. You can go to say like, "Hey, what tasks are delayed?" or "What's the progress update?" or "How many tasks are critical?" Like, you can literally have a conversation in natural language, English or Finnish or Dutch or whatever it is, about what the schedule entails. And then through those insights, you can use that to generate new sort of schedules or optimizations. It's fascinating. Um, Agents are gonna change how the world does business. You got companies like Trunk Tools, for example, that are enabling you to upload all the files for your project, and then you can ask questions on those files, right? Any question you want. And I think that most there's a lot of funding, a lot of startups that are being founded based on large language models, and you're going to see that continue for at least another 2 or 3 years.
Okay, so you're optimistic because there are some critics who say that we have now reached the, let's say, there are diminishing returns on AI investments. So
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is about what's called scaling laws, right?
mhm.
And the scaling laws are basically, neural networks are large language models run on neural networks, and neural networks are not new. They were invented in the 70s. What is new is the number of neurons, or in the case of a computer, it's the number of parameters in a neural network. And so in the 70s, you'd have like 10 or 50 or 100 of these neurons, call it, or parameters. Now it's 1.7 trillion. And so that's one of the things that changed. But to answer your question, I actually do believe that we've hit the limit of scaling laws. And the scaling laws, what they tell you is that the bigger the neural net, the smarter it is, right? And what's fascinating about neural nets is they've always had sort of um, they've had a really, really interesting positive property, and then two interesting negative properties. To one, like, advantage, and two, disadvantage. The advantage is that you don't have to explain to a neural net how to solve the problem you're trying to solve. That's what's fascinating. You don't have to tell it how to identify a cat. You don't have to tell it how to think. You can just feed it data, and then the neural net will tweak the parameters inside the net. And at some point, under certain parametric values, starts to answer your questions for you. Kind of fascinating. You don't have to explain anything to it. The downside to a neural net, well, it can't explain to you how it solved the problem because the answer is in the value of the numbers inside the 1.7 trillion numbers inside the net. And the other downside is it's never 100% accurate, i.e. hallucinations. So that's your question. Like, I actually do believe we've hit the limits of scaling laws. I think that what the large language models don't do is they don't have abstraction. They don't have a way to abstract the world or have a model of the world that they can then say is correct or incorrect. But there's kind of two answers I would give. One, there's an incredible amount of research happening on what's called world models. And so that's having a model of physics or a model of economy or a model of something where the neural net can then start feeding that model. Jan LeCun, from the head of AI at Facebook, is exactly of the same opinion, right? The scaling laws are done. Making neural nets bigger isn't going to make them smarter, but we should switch the architecture to what's called neurosymbolic, neural and symbolic, old school AI and new school, right? And the symbolic AI is part of that, the models that we need to sort of feed the neural nets. But the other point I'll make is that even if we haven't hit the scaling laws, you're still seeing value, right? Like, everybody says, okay, it hallucinates. Sure, but under what conditions are hallucinations okay? And the answer, in my opinion, is that as long as the effort required to check, let's assume it gives you 1,000 answers, and you know that 900 of them are correct, is the effort required to check 1,000 answers, whether they're correct or incorrect, less than the effort required to create 900 correct solutions. If that's the case, then you win, right? And there are definitely applications for that, right? So, yeah, I do believe scaling laws are correct. I believe that the limits of scaling laws. I believe like we've started to see the limits of LLMs, but on the one hand, there's a lot of research into what I call world models that is going to address some of those limitations. When that'll happen, I don't know, right? It's not something that's going to happen in the next couple of months. It's definitely in the order of years, right? Uh, and how is it in the 2-3 year timeline or the 5-10 year timeline? Depends on what you're trying to do, right? I think we will start seeing something interesting in the next 2-3 years. Um, we might be able to start doing something really, really powerful maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, but who knows, right? That's a guess. The other one is that
Okay.
we've got the scaling laws. You're still going to see, advantages or benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk Alice now. I noticed that Alice has undergone product renaming and expansion. Uh, can you provide an overview of the current Alice product suite and highlight what are the core functionalities of each component?
Yeah, the best way to think about Alice is we've released a suite of products currently. Back in the day, we had a BIM-based parametric or generative construction simulator. So the first of its kind, you take a BIM, you upload it on our system, you create the rule sets, the constraints, tasks, the resources, etc. You hit the simulate button and it creates a 4D model. It simulates the project. You can add cranes, add crews, reschedule, resequence, just change any parameter you want, hit the button and it propagates the change. The downside with that approach was that it took some time to set up, 2 to 4 weeks, and it wasn't integrated to existing systems. So what we've now released is a suite of products, and that suite of products enables you to schedule in 3D if you want to, right? Schedule in 2D if you want to, and then schedule in 1D if you want. And so here's what I mean by that. You can either import the BIM, set up the constraints, run the simulations that way. You can also use 2D diagrams. So you can import 2D diagrams and then schedule your solution that way. Or you could import a list of tasks. You can integrate directly into P6 and schedule it that way. And so those are 3 different sort of solutions to how you would do it. The last piece of the puzzle is we've released those 2 scheduling agents that I talked about, which is you can upload a Primavera P6 or a Microsoft project file, and the software will start running simulations and start to squeeze out, efficiency for you automatically without you doing anything. And the other one is that you can upload a schedule and then have a natural language conversation about it and gain insights into it. And then that feeds back into the simulation agent. There's a loop. Basically, you run simulations and then you can analyze the results and then run simulations to analyze the results. So what we're offering is the ability to, use scheduling agents to have conversations, rapidly see insights. And then we're offering this sort of like very dynamic way to schedule. You want to spend 5 to 10 minutes. Awesome. Upload it and then get the agents to do the work for you and give you insights. You want to spend, 1 to 2 hours. Awesome. Upload a 2D image, your PDF of your layout. Start visualizing those tasks, resequencing at a course level of detail, right? You want to spend, 2 to 4 hours? Great. Upload your P6 and start running simulations and optimize it. And you want to spend 2 to 3 weeks? Great. Use the 3D model. So whichever way you want to do it, whatever your workflow is, we can meet you where you're at.
Okay, so what you said about the 2D solution. So is it Alice Plan?
Yeah, absolutely. Alice Plan is the 2D solution.
Yeah, yeah. So why did you develop it?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? I mean, the thinking when I started a decade ago, 10 years ago, was BIM's the way to go. Well, it's a central model, right? And it's intelligent, it's object-oriented, it's parametric, and BIM is going to be how everything is run. Here we are 10 years later, what percentage of projects in the world use 3D, sorry.
Hmm.
Not that high. What projects in the world use 2D? I'd say 100%. Like I can't imagine building anything without some sort of 2D layout, right? And so that was one reason, right? The second reason was really interesting. I called the director of our customer success team, and I asked the question. I said, "Hey, what percentage of our projects, of our 3D projects use some form of 2D? And the answer was, he thought about it for a little bit and said, I'd say 100%. And it's funny, when we looked at the 3D models, what people were doing was they'd have a 3D model, but next to it, they'd have these little boxes, 2D boxes, whether it was for design or procurement or notice proceed or whatever it was. So like there was in 100% of the projects that we were doing in 3D, there was a 2D aspect to it. So we thought to ourselves, like, if people are really like going the long way around to bring 2D into the 3D world, why do it that way? Why don't you just give them the ability to do 2D straight off the bat? And it's fascinating. What's sort of crazy about it is that you can, as far as we can tell, right, you can get like 95, 98% of the value of the 3D with 2D. It's kind of crazy, yeah. But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, it makes sense. So
yeah.
if you think of typical workflow with Alice Plan, what does it look like?
Okay. So one of the reasons we made Alice Plan or developed it was, imagine I could give you a 4D model without the need for a 3D. Right? Imagine I give you 4D without the need for a 3D. Then the way that Alice Plan works is that you start with a schedule. You can create a schedule yourself or upload it. So on the left hand of the screen, you have the schedule. On the right hand of the screen, you upload PDF documents or plans or diagrams of what you're building. And on the right hand of the screen, as you upload the diagrams, what you can now do is you can kind of effectively drag and drop your schedule into the 2D plan. Now, at first, this sounds simple. You're like, oh, whatever, I can just drag and drop a bunch of tasks, so who cares? Well, here's where it gets kind of, I think, pretty cool. So what you can do is you can download groups of tasks. So the WBS levels, you can download, a box, and that box has 100 tasks in it. Like, okay, well, that's cool, fine. And then you can obviously resize it. You can kind of see on the screen, what you're building, where you're building it. But then here's what's really, really nifty is that you can actually draw arrows. You can resequence at the aggregate level. So instead of like back in the day, if you have, I don't know, shaft S3, S2, S1, each of the shafts has 100 tasks in it. If you wanted to try the sequence S3, S2, S1, you'd have to redraw the arrows at the individual level. With Alice, you just draw 3 arrows at the group level, you're done. You delete them, redraw them, and it actually figures it all out for you, right? So we took the spatial AI that we developed in 3D, we're applying it directly to 2D.
Okay. So what is the output of this process?
The output of the process. The output of the process is that you have a PDF with your tasks on top of it. And then when you press what we call the time lapse, it shows you how work progresses through your construction project. And so you effectively see work flowing through your job, right? Yeah. And obviously you can take that and then upload it back into the optimizer and then optimize from there. So that's the output. Your output is the time lapse in 2D of your job. You can resequence very rapidly. And then the output is also is the input for the scheduling piece of the product suite.
Okay. So do you imagine that a team who has been doing all this scheduling the old way, they would eagerly start using Alice Plan? What would be the motivation for them?
86% of the people of the customers we've talked to expressed a strong desire for spatial management in their scheduling. 76% of the people who show the prototype to expressed a strong interest to buy. I don't know what the percentage is, but I think it's somewhere around 70% of the projects that I've been on, at least, and at this point in time, there's probably like 50 or 60 of them that I've been involved with. If you walk into the project trailer, the wall is covered with phase diagrams. So that is a natural workflow. So to answer your question, Yes. I think most people actually schedule in 2D. They just don't think about it and they use PowerPoint.
Mm, yeah. Okay. So you have had some initial users testing Alice Plan, I guess.
Yeah.
So what has been the feedback?
They bought it.
That's a good feedback.
They bought it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You showed it to a major oil and gas company, for example, and they looked at it and they said, "Look, 100% of our projects use this approach already. We just don't have the software to do it. We're doing it manually. And here are three things that it has to do. We can't use it until you have these three things." And I left the meeting thinking, "That's awesome. We're gonna have those three things in like a week." So
O-
it's going well. It's going well. The feedback has been pretty darn positive.
Okay. Yeah. Um, Technically, what technical infrastructure or information architecture is required to effectively implement Alice products or the suite of products? It's particularly
Yeah,
Alice Plan.
that's a great question. So, it's really like it doesn't. You can use the Alice suite of products with any setup that you have. That is the huge change that's happened to us in the last 12 months and will continue over the next six. There's a number of very large product releases that are happening in the next 6 months that really like enable this vision that we had of, hey, whatever your level of sophistication is, whatever your, dimensions that you want to manage in 1D, 2D, 3D, whatever amount of effort you want to put into it, right? We have a solution for you. And so to answer the question, like you can use Alice with literally I have my PDF drawings and I wanna, help figure out how I'm gonna go about building it. I wanna create a schedule. Great, you can use it for that. You can say, "Hey, I have a schedule. I have a bunch of PDF drawings. I wanna visualize it." You can use it. You say, "Hey, look, all I have is a schedule. I created it in Microsoft Project Primavera. And I really just care about, tweaking a couple of small things. Maybe I got an hour I want to spend on it, maybe an hour and a half. Great, you can do that. You can say, look, I actually, have some trade assignment in my schedule. I use the occasional production rate. Maybe I got some quantities for, 10% of my tasks. Cool, you can use it. You could say, no, I'm an oil and gas company. I use budgeted labor units and crew sizing and production rates and detailed quantities. You can use it that way. You could then, again, a step up, you could say, look, I've got a 3D model, I've got my quantities, I've tagged my tasks with various sort of cost codes and whatnot, and I want to do that. Like whichever one of those like solutions you want, we got a way for you to do it, right? And so no project has all the information. That doesn't exist, right? There's not a single project we ever encountered that has, oh, we have all the data that you want, not in our field, right? And so, whichever amount of data you have and whatever level of sophistication you want to employ with this specific project, whether you want to spend 5 minutes or 5 weeks and anything in between, we've got a way for you to do that in a solution. That's, I think, what's really exciting is this like suite that is so dynamic and the ability for you to basically apply the way that you want to manage to it.
Mm. Um, you have you mentioned your kind of roadmap for your what you're doing next, but how do you see in general AI powered tools evolving and transforming construction planning and management in the, let's say, next 5 years?
I think
Will we see
uh,
more? Maybe one question is, do you see that BIM will eventually prevail?
I think that BIM is the future. I think that it's not like I think that what you'll need for it to actually start being used is that you have to lower the amount of effort to create and then modify or analyze the BIM model. And what I think is the tools that are starting to come out in terms of AI and LLMs and all of these kind of things, right? Those are the tools that will have the ability to change, like substantially reduce the effort because you'll be able to say, "Hey, I want you to create me a 3D model based off these 2D drawings." and the software will do that for you to a 90% accuracy. And then you can tweak it to get it to the last 10%, right? And so, uh, you will see BIM, in my opinion, start to become more and more important as the level of effort to create and modify it starts to reduce. And I do think that the technology to do that is here already. So those are the sort of things that you'll start seeing.
Okay, so maybe AI will help in this process as well as you said
I
that.
believe so.
Yeah, yeah,
You have companies like Augmenta is the one that comes to mind, and there's a couple others.
yeah, yeah. I have had them on my podcast as well, by the way.
Oh, great. I mean,
Yeah. Okay, Renee. I think this has been a very good update on what you're doing, and um, but maybe how can our listeners start exploring your products?
just either send me an email, Rene@alistechnologies.com. I answer my emails, I read all of them, or just get on our website and fill out a contact form. Somebody will be in touch, give you a demo. It's pretty easy. The learning time for Alice plan is zero. You're up and running. Like you can literally open it and start using it. Yeah.
Okay.
The learning time for Alice Optimize is sub 1 hour. Schedulers usually learn in 40 minutes. That's what's crazy. The new suite we have, it's almost plug and play. But there's not even like training really that we have to do. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds fantastic. All right, Renee. Thanks for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to your what you're coming to what you're going to release next, or is it just improving what is already very good?
Well, what's going to start happening next is we have what we call intelligent rescheduling. So this is Alice has the ability to ingest progress and then, like propagate that progress. So these tasks are delayed and this tool will reschedule around the delay. What we're going to have the ability to do in the next few weeks is you can upload progress and you can say, you know what, freeze this, like the next 2 weeks are fixed. So freeze that and then reschedule after. Or alternatively, do everything you can to reschedule for the next 2 months, but get me back on track for this milestone in 2 months from now. So the ability to freeze and unfreeze certain parts of the schedule is what we're releasing, which I think is like super, super exciting. But
Okay. Thank you very much.
thanks, Arnie. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.